Flash flood disaster in Sumatra, Indonesia, Sunday morning at 7 o'clock. It always starts quiet, like every normal Sunday morning, and that's why this story hits so hard, because nobody woke up imagining their world would flip in minutes. So before anything else, here's my hook. When the water comes, it doesn't knock. It doesn't ask permission. It just takes everything, and it forces you to face the question we all avoid. What would you do when the things you love are suddenly drowning? Now, listen, if at any point in this story you feel the need to pause, to breathe, to reflect, then I want you to take that feeling and do something with it. Because stories like this are not just sad news, they're wake-up calls. And I want you to share this message, support disaster relief causes, donate if you can, or simply learn, because awareness matters and someday it might save lives. It happened early, Sunday morning, 7 o'clock. Fog still hanging low over the green hills of Sumatra, roosters crowing, children preparing for school, and in a valley full of small houses there was the smell of wood fires and breakfast rice. And suddenly, without warning, mountains released their anger. Rain had been falling for days in the jungle, heavy, silent, invisible behind the canopy, and the rivers swelled until the earth could hold no more. People heard a roar like 1,000 engines, and before they could understand, the flash flood hit. Walls of brown water, mud, broken branches, entire trees, motorcycles, even rooftops swept forward like a stampede. Survivors would later say the same sentence over and over again. It came too fast. We had no time. A mother, shaking, told reporters, "One minute my feet were dry, the next minute I was holding my son above my head, screaming his name. The water was at my chest." A teenager said, "I didn't see a river. I saw something alive, angry, moving like a monster." And here's the brutal part. Nobody expected it. Nobody was prepared, and nobody was in charge at that moment. Panic is powerful. Panic is contagious, and when the water rises, leadership disappears unless someone decides to act. Rescue teams, volunteers, and villagers climbed roofs, tied ropes, shouted names through the rain. Some men tied motorbike helmets to their bodies as flotation devices. Others used banana tree trunks as rescue rafts. A father with a broken leg still dragged 3 children to higher ground. A grandmother held a plastic water tank against her chest and floated through debris for almost an hour. Technical rescue was improvised. They used whatever they could because waiting meant dying. There were no sirens, no emergency loudspeakers, no perfectly organized response. It was heart, muscle, instinct. Later, experts would explain that flash floods in tropical regions are often triggered by landslides, deforestation, heavy rain. But for the people living in the valley, the cause didn't matter in that moment, only survival mattered. And here's the psychological layer. In disasters, something strange happens. The concept of responsibility becomes foggy. Psychologists call it diffusion of responsibility, the idea that in chaos, people assume someone else will take charge. Until they realize nobody is coming, and that's the most dangerous moment. That morning in Sumatra, one volunteer yelled, "Don't wait, move now." And that single sentence saved lives. Because when someone finally steps forward, others follow. The flood didn't just destroy homes, it destroyed certainty. One man stood in front of what used to be his living room, only mud left, and whispered, "Everything is gone except my family. And for that, I am rich." The human interest side is heavy. A little girl lost her school books, but she kept her cat alive inside her shirt. A boy rescued strangers he'd never met. Neighbors who barely spoke before now shared food, blankets, tears, trauma mixed with gratitude. And after the water receded, silence was louder than the flood. The earth smelled like wet soil. Memories were buried under mud. And yet there were small miracles. A photograph found under debris. A guitar floating. A baby carried in a basket, still breathing. When media arrived, the chaos turned into headlines, but headlines never capture the heartbeat of real people. They never show how survivors sit under tarps at night, listening to insects, trying to sleep while replaying screams in their mind. Psychologists say survivors carry invisible weight, survivors' guilt, anxiety, hypervigilance whenever rain falls, but they also carry something else, a stubborn will to rebuild. And here is the reflection, the philosophy hidden inside tragedy. In life, we plan, we schedule, we expect normal mornings, but nature does not follow our calendar. Humans can build walls and routines, but the world still reminds us that control is an illusion. The lesson is not fear, the lesson is humility. The water teaches us to pay attention, to respect the land, to care for each other because nothing is guaranteed except the way we choose to respond. And here's my motivational punchline. We don't get to choose the disaster, but we get to choose who we become afterward. If you're listening to this right now, think of your own life. There are floods of another kind, stress, heartbreak, lost jobs, broken dreams. When it hits, do you freeze or do you move? Do you wait for someone to take charge or do you step forward? Every tragedy contains a mirror. What you see is up to you. The flood in Sumatra left scars, but also left survivors who now tell their children, when the water rises, help someone, even if you are afraid. And that line, that simple line is why this story matters, because courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is choosing action while your heart is shaking. So let this Sunday morning in Sumatra remind us, life can change at 7 a.m. without warning, but human connection is the raft that keeps us alive. If this story moved you, don't let it fade. Support disaster awareness, learn, talk about prevention, be the person who acts when others hesitate. Because someday, somewhere, someone will need you, and you will hear the water coming. And that is the moment you discover your real strength.